guys, welcome to a new video by Arc Knowledge. Today we'll be covering how to solve quadratic equations using factoring. Now, sometimes you'll be given an equation such as this one, already in factored mode. And what we mean by factored mode is that you have these two kind of expressions multiplied by one another of x plus or minus something times x plus or minus something. And in this situation, you're going to be asked to solve for x, or the values of x's that satisfy this equation. And what you can do is, if the equation is given to you in factored form, we just simply say each, part of the equation is equal to 0. So in this case, you get set x minus 4 is equal to 0, and x plus 5 is equal to 0. And then you just solve for x. And here we're going to get x is equal to 4 and x is equal to negative 5. And why and how do we know that these are the solutions? Well, if we plug x into these equations, let's try x is equal to 4. Right? So for x is equal to 4, we can say 4 minus 4 times 4 plus 5. In this case, we're going to get 0 times 9, which is equal to 0, which satisfies the equation. And if you do the same thing for negative 5, we're going to get, on the right side, we're going to get 0 times something, which is going to be 0 as well. And that's how we know for a fact that these values are correct. Now, let's say we get this one. We do the same thing, right? Because we know it's in factored form. We set each side equal to 0. And we're going to basically bring everything over. So we have 5x is equal to 4. We're going to solve for x. Now we have this extra step, which we can still isolate x and get 4 over 5 on this side. And here, we're going to do this. And here we're going to get x is equal to 2. And these are the two solutions. And the way we typically write the answer is that we say x is equal to 4 over 5, and we put a comma, and then we put the other answer, the other value. And that's typically how we want to circle our answer at the very end. Next, this is in a quadratic form, right? Where we have the expressions actually foiled. And how do we solve for the x values that satisfies this equation? Well, we basically want to transform this into factored form, which is what we saw previously in this kind of arrangement. And the way we can do that is by first having these x's. We know that we're going to have two x components that are being multiplied like this. The next thing we want to check for is the signs, right? We know that both these are plus signs, so it's going to be x plus something. And the next thing that we want to look for is what two numbers multiply to get 5. Well, the only two numbers that really multiply to get 5 that are integers are 1 and 5, right? 1 times 5. And the next thing we want to check for, well, what is their sum? In this case, it's 6, right? So we know that 1 times 5 is equal to 5, but we also know that 1 plus 5 is 6, and that's where this number comes in. So because we know that 1 and 5 satisfy both the multiplication aspect and the addition aspect, we can plug these numbers in, 1 and 5. And we can then solve this side and get x is equal to negative 1. This side is x is equal to negative 5. Okay. We can also just check whether this x plus 1, x plus 5 even gets us back to what we have on top, right? The problem that we began with. And what we do is we multiply this and these, so we get x squared plus 5x, and then we just do the same thing for the second. We FOIL. We get plus x plus 5 is equal to 0. Simplifying and combining like terms, we get x squared plus 6x plus 5 is equal to 0. And that's the same thing we got initially. And that's how we know we factored correctly. And from the factor, we get these two solutions. Taking a look at this problem that we have here, we get x squared plus 5x is equal to 0. Now, this is not in factored form, but it's also not in a quadratic equation the way that we saw it before, right, where we had a constant at the end. Instead, we get this x squared plus 5x. And what we can do in this scenario is actually factor out the x, and we get x times x plus 5 is equal to 0. And the fact that we have this x here, this x term isolated, that's also a solution we can come to, because it's just going to be 0, right? This isolated variable here, we could just set that equal to 0, and we do the same process for this. X plus 5 is equal to 0. In this case, we're going to get x is equal to negative 5, and we just know that x is equal to 0. So that made our solution a little easier once we recognize that we could just simply factor this x out, and we get it to this form, which is a lot more manageable. And we get our solution that x is equal to 0 and negative 5. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe.